Welcome to today's explainer. Look, there is a super frustrating secret about investing that almost nobody warns you about when you first get started. You open your account, you get a year or two in, and the number staring back at you on the screen is just underwhelming. You've been doing everything right. You're contributing every single month, but the balance looks like it's barely moved. It is a wildly frustrating experience, and honestly, it's exactly why compounding feels so incredibly slow initially. So you're sitting there looking at this flat line of a balance, and you inevitably start to wonder, is this whole compounding thing just a myth? Like, does it only work for other people, or am I actually doing something wrong here? This specific feeling of putting in all this effort and seeing zero momentum is exactly why people quit investing at the absolute worst possible moment. And the crazy part, they usually throw in the towel right before the math gets really interesting, simply because they think nothing is happening. But I need you to hear this loud and clear. You are not doing anything wrong. You are just early. Sticking with something boring is incredibly hard, right? We're human. We want action. We want instant results. But these flat, seemingly uneventful years aren't broken. They are secretly, quietly building the foundation for massive future growth. The reality is that compounding isn't actually slow at all. It's just very, very patient. There's actually an almost embarrassing psychological reason why compounding feels so painfully slow at the start. Our brains are basically hardwired to understand addition, not multiplication. Think about your paycheck. It comes in, it's a fixed number, and it adds to your bank account in a straight, highly intuitive line. $10 plus $10 plus $10. We get that. But compounding doesn't add, it multiplies. And human intuition is famously, hilariously terrible at grasping multiplication over a long period of time. To really prove just how terrible we are at visualizing multiplication, let's play a quick game. It's a classic finance thought experiment. Imagine you take a standard piece of paper and you fold it in half 50 times. How thick does it get? Just take a second and actually guess. Most people guess maybe a few inches, or maybe a foot if they're feeling really adventurous. Well, get ready for this. The actual answer is 93 million miles. That piece of paper is now literally thick enough to reach past the sun. No way, right? But it's not a trick question. That is simply the mathematical reality of multiplication when you give it enough turns to do its thing. And your investment portfolio works the exact same way as that piece of paper. It's just slower and a lot quieter, making it dangerously easy to underestimate. Let's ground this in reality and look at an example of this quiet multiplication in action. Say you start putting $400 a month into a retirement account. After year one, you've contributed $4,800 out of your own pocket. The growth added to that, maybe a few $100s. It feels like nothing. By year three, you've put in over $14,000 of your own hard-earned cash, but the growth has only added about $1,500. It feels awful, honestly. The cash you're physically contributing is doing all the heavy lifting, and if you judge the whole concept of compounding by these first 3 years, you'd probably think it was a complete scam. But falling into that mindset is the ultimate trap. As this quote captures perfectly, compounding isn't underperforming in those years, it's loading the base. This is an absolutely crucial mindset shift. The base simply has to get large enough before the multiplication has anything meaningful to grab onto and multiply. You aren't failing, you are building the runway. Which brings us to what I consider the single most important concept of this entire explainer. The exact moment the math flips in your favor. I call this the crossover point. It's the specific year where your portfolio's investment growth, so the money your money makes completely on its own, becomes larger than the amount of cash you personally contributed that year. Notice this isn't about your total balance. It's comparing your annual growth against your annual out-of-pocket contribution. This is the magical moment the machine you built finally starts outworking you. Let's watch how this builds over time using that exact same example, assuming a perfectly reasonable 7% average return. Year one, no contest. Your contributions easily win. But let's roll the clock forward to around year 11 or 12. Suddenly, 7% of your total balance is actually a bigger number than the $4,800 you scraped together to put in that year. You hit the crossover. And it doesn't just stop there. By year 20, the growth in a single year might be double your contributions. Your portfolio basically went out and hired itself an extra income stream that never takes a day off. Now, let's look at the real-world stakes of reaching that crossover point as early in life as possible. Check out these two scenarios. Person A starts investing at age 25, putting away $300 a month for 40 years. Total out of pocket, $144,000. Now, person B waits until they are 35, and they try to catch up by aggressively contributing $450 a month for 30 years. Notice that person B is actually sweating more and putting in more of their own cash, $162,000 total. But here's the kicker. Assuming they both earn the exact same 7% average return, person A ends up with roughly $700,000 more than person B by age 65. Think about that for a second. Not slightly more. Hundreds of thousands of dollars more from the person who actually put in less physical cash. So why did person A win by such a massive landslide margin? It's simple. You can always hustle and replace missed dollars, but you genuinely cannot replace missed years. Person A's early contributions had 10 extra years sitting on the other side of their crossover point. They were compounding through that exact magical stretch where growth starts entirely dwarfing the contributions. Person B's money, it just never gets those 10 multiplying years back. Now, listen, if you're getting a later start, do not let this slam the door in your face. Person B still ends up retiring very comfortably. But the vital lesson here is summed up in this quote. The flat, boring, unimpressive-looking early years are actually the most valuable years in the entire process. Why? Because they are the furthest away from your finish line, meaning they have the maximum amount of time to multiply. If you're in that flat stretch right now, you are not behind. You are planting seeds. Think of compounding like a snowball rolling down a really long hill. Up at the top, the slope is flat, you are physically pushing the snowball yourself, and progress is agonizingly slow. But that flat top section is establishing the snowball's core size. The wild, dramatic growth you see at the bottom of the hill is entirely determined by how much snow it managed to gather at the boring top. If you quit, or you shrink the flat top of the hill, you permanently shrink the base that every single future year multiplies from. So to survive the flat top of the hill, you have to avoid a few major psychological traps. The biggest one, checking your account balance too often. Staring at your investing app every day in the early years is literally like staring at a tree trunk for 10 minutes to see if it's growing. It's ridiculous, right? You're just watching market noise, those little daily wiggles, which can feel incredibly discouraging when the line goes down. True progress is only visible when you zoom out and look at the photos a year apart. The other massive trap is social media. Whatever you do, don't compare your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 20. You might see some retired teacher online whose portfolio has ballooned to 4 times what they put in. But what you don't see are the 13 quiet, boring years of loading the base that happened entirely off camera before anyone was watching. It's just an unfair comparison because you are reading completely different chapters of the math. All right, let's get super practical. Here are some rapid-fire survival tactics for making it through those boring years. Number 1, stop comparing your growth dollars to your contribution dollars early on. It's a losing game. Number 2, go find your own crossover point. Use a basic retirement calculator online so you have a concrete actual date to look forward to. Number 3, when you finally hit that exciting growth phase, do not pull back your contributions. Keep both of those engines running. And number 4, expect down years. Even past the crossover, the market shrinks sometimes. That doesn't mean the mechanism is broken. It's still compounding away underneath the surface. Let's zoom out and look at this full roadmap. Year 1, you are purely loading the base. Around year 12, for many consistent investors, boom, you hit the crossover point. By year 25, your growth is doubling your contributions. And by retirement, your portfolio is doing so much heavy lifting that your whole focus shifts to just preserving that massive base. Having this mental map makes enduring that first flat stretch significantly easier to stomach. I want to leave you with a thought today that should entirely reframe your relationship with those frustrating early investments. Compounding was never actually slow. It just spends its early years quietly building something you can't see yet. Every single month you push through the boredom, you are buying the one asset that genuinely cannot be faked or rushed: time inside the market. So my final question for you to take away from this explainer is this. Do you know roughly where your own crossover point is? If you don't, I highly encourage you to go run your own numbers today. Finding that specific date transforms investing from this abstract, boring chore into an inevitable, unstoppable machine. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep feeding the base, and I'll see you next time.